Hello everyone, my name's Andrew, also go by DRU in the electronic music production world. Today I'm going to attempt to give you a good introduction to Logic, everything you need to get started. I'll cover some advanced techniques, although I'm going to save a lot and do some future videos where I break these advanced techniques into specific categories so I can dive into them deeper. So let's get started. When I'm in Apple Logic Pro. First of all, I should say I'm in Logic Pro X. This is still the current version of Logic. I'm sure we will get an 11 sometime in the future, but I'm on X. All right, so when you create a new track in Logic, it gives you this prompt. It says, do you want to create an audio file, software instrument, external MIDI, guitar or bass, or drummer? So let me go over what each of these mean. For those of you who are familiar with recording audio, this should be pretty self-explanatory. I'll start with audio, where I'm at. It gives me the option of selecting what input I would like. I can also change said input after the fact. So same thing if I click on a software instrument. So audio, somewhat self-explanatory. This is going to be something that you use a microphone or a line cable that is some sort of exterior source that you are recording. So a vocal, drums, a sample, a true keyboard that you're miking, this would be an audio input. If we are using MIDI controlled instruments, that is MIDI controlled instruments that rest in the computer, this will be a software instrument. Now, just like with the audio, we can select what specific software instrument that we would like, and just like with the audio, we can change that instrument after the fact. So a lot of times I'll like to use just an empty channel strip. Certain if you leave the default on an instrument library that has a lot of info, it might take a while to open up, and that can be annoying. So I like empty channel strip. If you choose default patch, that's going to set up some basic bus routing for some reverb buses. I'll explain what that means in the future, but essentially there's more things in that defined patch. So the reverb sends, if you don't want that, which is me most of the time, I choose empty channel strip. Alright, so let's just begin. Let's say I choose, for sake of doing this the fastest, our default patch. It opens up this instrument. Alright, so let's address the view of this window for a little bit. Up here in the center, this is all the info about our project that we're in. We have where we are in the actual track, beat, ticks, bars, sort of like 18th bar, 27th bar, see that change. BPM, key of the song. Now this is something that we set. It's not required to make that accurate, so don't assume that is going to be correct. And then finally, time signature 4/4. Now for those of you that are familiar with composing music already, you'll be familiar, or playing an instrument, be familiar with the idea of a time signature. Time signatures are the division of each measure of music. So we're in 4/4 right now. Most popular music is in 4/4. Most dance music is in 4/4. What that means is there's 4 what we call quarter notes per measure. If I go in here and I turn on the metronome, so that's this symbol. If I turn on my metronome and I play this, we're going to hear 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And in each one of these measures, there are 4 of those numbers I counted. All right, well, I'll address more of how to see things in a second. So let's just move around here. So in the top view display mode, we can change how we view it. We can see time. Why is this important? Well, if you're doing work for an artist and they say at 2 minutes and 10 seconds, I need this edited, and you're in your Beats and Project, there's nothing that tells you what time we're at. So unless you want to have your phone out counting time while you listen, you're probably going to want to change this to time view. All right, moving on. Custom. Now, custom is really it's great because we get like all of the stuff, so the time and the measures and the tempo. One of the best things about custom, or the time that you're going to actually need to use this view, is anytime you have a tempo that's not a solid number. So like if you're over here and we try to enter 123.6, notice the point doesn't do anything. It just keeps going. This really frustrated me in the beginning. I was like, how do I enter that tempo? All right, in here I got 120.6. Perfect, it works. So that's sort of, those are the options for, changing your view. All right, so moving over here, we have our play controls. Most of you that have ever used a CD player or a car CD player, you'll be familiar with these symbols. This is go ahead. Notice it's skipping a measure. This is go back to the beginning once we aren't at the beginning. If we hit play, it'll play. If we hit the square, that's stop. It'll stop. This symbol is our record mode. The standard in Logic is to record it from the beginning. So if I hit record, it's just going to start from the beginning. If you want a count in, you've got to hit it from the very beginning. It's going to give me a 4-bar count in, and it will start. All right, so continuing on to the left, we have our quick help button. Now, quick help is great because it basically turns on this quick help button up in the corner, which anytime I hover over something, it's going to tell me what that thing does. Rewind button, forward button. For those of you that are really new to Logic and you want to explore and figure out, what these buttons do, that's a great tool for you. All right, so using our quick help button, which we enable by hitting our question, we can see over here, editors button, access editors, audio track, audio file, drummer, mixer button, smart controls button. All right, so these are different shortcuts for accessing different windows within Logic. All right, so basically if we're editing audio, we'd use our clip drive. It's showing MIDI right now because I have a software instrument. If I create another track and choose an audio file, it'll open up an audio editing window. Smart controls, these we will discuss in the advanced features. Just know that you can make a lot of really cool music without utilizing that at all. These buttons up here are handy, but I don't actually use them. I use key commands to access my mixing window. And I'll discuss setting key commands in a second. All right, so that covers those three. Quick help. All right, toolbar button. Show the toolbar, which contains button for key functions. All right, so here are some of those toolbars. Or here are some of those functions. Repeat section, cut section, insert silence, join, split. One thing about all of these digital audio workstations is that they can do essentially everything that a modern day composer producer would need it to do, and they can each do that in a few different ways. In other words, you can use tools. We can use our main menu up here. We can use key command shortcuts to create another track. Really, ultimately, I suggest you figure out what kind of music you want. You learn and approach Logic in a way that you can basically customize your workflow for what it is you're trying to create. All right. So finally, we have this inspector window. What that does is it allows us to turn up or lower the volume of this track, which we can also do here. It allows us to send the audio to buses, allows us to see what those buses are doing. It allows us to add plugins. I will address that in more in depth, but it allows us to say add one of the built-in plugins that Logic comes with, like a delay, distortion, and then if you have any third-party stuff, so like Serum or Waves plugins or the Universal Audio or whatever, you can access them here. All right. So that kind of covers the left side of the screen. We will address MIDI effects in the advanced MIDI window. Signal chain, so this is standard in all these programs. So basically you need to know the audio flows from the top to the bottom. So let me just create an example here. I'll add an EQ, double clicking there. There's my EQ. I'm gonna then add, let's say, distortion. All right, this is sort of theoretical because I don't have any sounds in here, but if I were to, let's say, EQ out, whoa, my EQ is huge. Must have been somebody else in this lab. All right, so if I say EQ out everything, like do a high pass filter, cutting everything off below 710, and then I distort that, the only thing that's going to hit the distortion, or ultimately that we're going to hear, is above this 750. Now, if I reverse the order of these plugins, it's going to do the opposite. So the entire sound's going to get distorted, and then everything below 750 is getting cut off. For that application with the distortion, the EQ, it's not as crucial, but like you need to be really familiar with that as you get further in sound design, and then as you start to understand how some of these processing units work, it's important to address certain issues before you do certain audio processing, namely compressing. Compressors generally favor like low-end frequencies, so you're going to want to EQ out lows before compressing an audio signal. If it's, say, like a guitar or this piano, we can essentially limit the amount of work said compressor's doing by cutting off sound before it goes into the compressor. All right, so let's say I like this distortion and EQ effect. I could go over here and I could go File, Save Channel Strip Setting As. If I do that, then I can go in and create another track, or in a future project file, I could open up this this same exact chain with the distortion followed by the EQ, and it would save me the time of recreating that. And then the more songs you work on, the more specific things you've done, and the harder it is to recall all that. So saving strips can really speed up our workflow. All right, so moving into the central window, we have our loop function up at the top. We can access this and mess with it a couple ways. We can drag from left to right to create a new loop right there, instead of moving it and then changing it. So it saves you time to just go like that. If we hold Command, so some keyboards it's like the Apple button, but or the weird sort of infinity looking symbol that's changed. If we hit that while we're holding hovered on the loop, it's going to alternate the yellow with this checkered looking arrow thing. The checkered arrow, it skips this section. So if we're playing, it's just going to skip 8, go straight to 9. That's cool to experiment with arrangement changes in a song. So like, say you think like, oh, well, it'd be really cool to go from this instrumental break back into a chorus. But right now I have the pre-chorus in the middle. Well, you could use that function to skip it without actually deleting those files to hear it and figure out what you think of that. All right. If I go back, the yellow, this is our loop function. We can enable it and disable it with these buttons on the top. You're going to notice that this happens a lot. Like for every function, we can change it multiple ways in Logic. So it doesn't really matter if you know every way. It's just a matter of knowing how to do at least one of them and being able to do them in a timely fashion. All right. moving on, we've got, so let me turn back on our quick help over here. We've got our tuner button. Open the tuner, which you can use to tune instruments connected to your system. All right. So we don't currently have any instruments connected to my system, hence tuner not being enabled. This is another example. We can access it two ways. If you go into the plugins within Logic, into metering, there's a tuner as well. So works with either way. If I have over here replace button, replace an existing recording or portion of it with a new recording. All right, I do not use that function much, nor do I really even know what that is. All right, solo mode. This you can access by hitting S. Turns on our solo mode. Essentially, it'll, like it sounds, it's going to solo out whatever it is channel we have selected, or multiple of them. All right, count in button. So if I want to, if you're working with a singer, and they say they want a different kind of count in, we can go to not exactly sure. All right. Our metronome, and essentially count in. Again, I said that when we restart a recording, where I start recording from any sort of section, it's going to give me that 4-bar count in. Really useful so that anyone who's recording can like get ready to do so. All right, moving quickly along, the top right window. This is how we access things that aren't typically just within Logic. So on the right, browsers. This is just like your Finder on an Apple or browser, or I haven't been on PC in a while, but file manager or something like that. That's how we can access, say, external drives where we have samples or other project files if we want to use an audio file. It's a lot more useful than going outside into actual Finder. You can do that as well and drag them into the file, but it's a lot easier to do it this way. All right, this loop-de-doop symbol is our Apple loops. Logic and GarageBand come with a set of Apple loops, and you can download more of them should you want to. And essentially, these Apple loops are all recordings. Some of them have the ability to be converted to MIDI, so like when the green symbol versus the audio. These are useful. Logic has a pretty cool way of searching for our samples, so I could like choose organ that's like jazz organ and distorted, and it gives me these organ riffs. If I click on them, it'll play a sample. Pretty cool. And the most handy thing about this is, for those of you that know Omnisphere, it's got a really cool searching feature. FM8's pretty cool too, where it's like this. We just pick certain parameters, and then any sound or sample in this case that fits those parameters will come up. So like guitars, clean guitars. Oh, sweet. Electric arpeggio. All right. So pretty cool. Now, for those of you who have been producing for a while, sampling is a really big thing, and has been for quite a while at this point. So most producers develop their own collection of samples based on the music they like or the other producers they're following. I recommend putting those on an external drive, accessing them here. If you are a laptop producer, I'm currently on a Mac Pro, so I don't really have as much of a memory issue as those of you on laptops. A lot of clients I've had have requested I help them delete Apple loops from their system. I will show you how to do that in our in one of the advanced videos coming in the future. But essentially, you go to System, Library, Audio, loops, and there's like an Apple Loops folder. I will show you how to do that in the future. All right, let's get at it so I can discuss some of the other basic features. All right, so let's say I want to write a 4-bar phrase. I'm going to use the loop thing that we had for 4 bars. I'm going to turn on my metronome. So when I hear it, I can sort of think about the beat I'm at. All right. Now, I'm going to choose to write this in with MIDI draw. I'll show you what that means. Since I'm on a MIDI controlled instrument, so that is a digital virtual instrument, I will discuss. We can also use real MIDI controlled instruments, like say a Moog or Moog, as they say, a Rhodes, anything that's MIDI controlled. We can send this MIDI information, have it play our external instrument, and then record the audio coming out of it. And that's a little bit more advanced, so I'll show that to you in the future. All right, so we've got our default keyboard here. I'm going to hit Control-click on the track. I'm going to hit Create Empty MIDI Region. I'm going to then drag it to 4 bars. Now, when I do that, and I double click, it's going to open up this MIDI window. You might remember seeing that. If we click this little scissors symbol, it does the same thing. All right. The default control is our command. When I hold command, you see a little pencil or a pen change. All right. So I'm going to write a chord progression here. All right. Let me get at this. I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel. Just writing a basic 4-chord pattern within the key of C, A minor. Here we go. Cool. So I can shorten the MIDI, I can extend the MIDI, I can play separate things, all sorts of options there. All right, so it sounded a little distorted. That's because, and thin, it's because we got our high pass filter on. Let's turn off that distortion. All right. So let's say I want to create another instrument and I want to choose a drum kit that Logic comes with. All right, I can do that a few ways. I can hit Command D to duplicate this track. Let's do that. Command D. I'm going to then turn off the EQ that we had. And over here, we can access this library. So again, library is Logic's built-in instruments. I'm going to click on Vintage Electric Piano. This kind of gets out of the subfolder. Now we're in the main folder. I can choose Electronic Drum Kit. I'm going to choose a drum machine, and I'm going to choose Boutique 808. For those of you that are familiar with the TR-808, this is kind of Logic's built-in version of that. TR-808 was a drum machine that Roland made that was so impactful on music that it still survives today. It is one of the most requested sounds for the trap hip hop influenced genres. I get them a lot. All right. So again, I'm in the MIDI draw. If I zoom in on Logic drum kits, it's kind of cool. It'll tell us what they are. So again, I'm holding Command. I'm gonna put a kick. I'm shorting it. Let's do a halftime thing. So I'm going to do kick on 1, snare on 3. Then I'm going to have my kick do a little like the interplay, syncopation, make this a little hip hop sounding. All right. If I select them all and I want to say just copy this kick pattern so I can start it on measure 3, I'm going to hold Option. Option is the shortcut for copying audio files. A few other programs also use Option, so that's somewhat good about learning this. It's not totally unique to Logic. All right, so now I have a kick and snare pattern. Let's add some hi-hats in here. How about just a quarter note hi-hats? All right, so again, I'm holding Option. That copies it. All right, let's hear this loop. All right, so got some tracks going now. I could obviously do just general songwriting. I could create another instrument, pick something else that came with Logic. I could add effects to either channel. I can use these MIDI instruments. The great thing about MIDI, if you don't know, stands for Musical Instrument Data Interface. One of the weirdest ways to say the language that instruments, computer-based instruments read. So essentially, the rhythm is in the MIDI clip, the pitch is in the MIDI clip, the velocity is in the MIDI clip, so how hard these hits are. There's all this information, but it's not like an audio file. An audio file is the literal audio recording of whatever it is. So with regards to Logic, or MIDI, it's actually much more malleable. We can change it to a lot of things. So I can like select, for instance, another instrument. Let's go with like electro bump, and it's going to change the instrument. For those of you that have ever worked with audio, it takes a recording another take on a different drum kit to do that to an audio drum kit, besides just effects processing it, which isn't nearly as controllable as what we just did. For the piano, I could do the same thing. I could try like the Wurlitzer Classic. Alright, I could duplicate. Oh, whoops. What did I do? I accessed the drop-down button from Logic's Electro Bump drum kit. So all these drum kits, kind of the cool way they're built is it's a stack of instruments. So we can put effects on the whole kit together. It's basically like a drum bus that comes already set up. The cool thing about having the ability to do this drop-down menu, I could put a reverb just on the snare. I could say turn the snare down relative to the kick. These are things that took me like a little while to realize I could do. Before I realized that drop-down menu, I was doing things like duplicating MIDI. I still have to do this if it's a third-party drum kit, copying it down and like deleting my kicks and my hi-hats and then just calling this one snare. If I double click over here, I can rename tracks, so that's pretty useful. All right, I believe this should be enough information for you to get going. Finally, one of the other things that's great about MIDI is it's fluid to the tempo. So if I play this, I can slow things down, and they're literally, or speed them up. Now, when you speed up or slow down audio, it actually downgrades the quality of said audio file, which is why, like, if you imagine a super slowed down audio file, it's going to sound like it's breaking up. Those pieces that are breaking up are almost like fragments of the audio file. We don't have that issue at all with MIDI. So please feel free to shoot me an email. My email is below if you have any questions about what I've covered in this lesson. Again, this was meant to just be like grazing the surface of what is possible in Logic and just showing you the basic tools to get you started. I guess one last thing I didn't really address is changing our view. So this is another thing that's like we can do multiple ways and is important because, you know, sometimes we want to look into the MIDI clip further. So up here, side to side, if I drag it to the right to bigger, it gets bigger. Up to down, same thing. Scrolling with the tracker ball, I think that's what it's called, thing on my Magic Mouse, I can essentially hold Option and do the same thing. I can change the whole view. If I do that down here with Option, holding Option, it will work. Remember, holding Option was the way we copy things over and change the view. All right, finally, we can do the same view down here as we did in our main edit window. Cool. Now, with regards to this MIDI functions, all these controls, score, step editor, quantization, let's see, audio editing, logic track customization, I will cover in the future videos. Please let me know if you had any questions, and I hope this was helpful for you. Thank you very much. Happy producing.